You keep asking because they never answered. Stop explaining your question to someone who understood it the first time. They heard you. They just gave you a reaction, an excuse, an attitude, because an actual answer would require accountability. And now you think you're overthinking because the conversation ended, but your question is still sitting there unanswered. This tactic is intentional and it's meant to paralyze your decisions. In this video, you will learn how to recognize when someone is responding without answering, what that confusion may be telling you. Then I'll show you what to do about it. Because repeating the question louder will not make someone more honest. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm No One Said That, a clarity life coach and educator, and I teach people how to understand confusing emotions, behaviors, and patterns without diagnosing everybody or abandoning what they clearly experienced. Because sometimes you are not confused about what just happened. You are confused because the person keeps giving you everything except a direct answer. So let's get into how to identify this. A response is not automatically an answer. You ask, why didn't you tell me where you were going? They say, now I have to report everything I do? That was a response. That was not an answer. You ask, did you tell them what I shared with you privately? And they say, I cannot believe you would even think I would do something like that. Again, a response, no answer. You ask, are you still communicating with that person? And they say, you clearly don't trust me, so what's the point of this relationship? Now, somehow, you are defending your trust, explaining your insecurity, improving your love, while the original question leaves the building. That is how confusion gets enforced. Not because you did not ask clearly, but because their response forced you to address a new problem before they addressed your original one. They may become offended. They may attack your tone. They may answer a different question that wasn't asked. Everything except the information you requested. And because they use a lot of words, you begin to wonder whether you missed it or not. But you did not miss it. They completed a sentence. They did not complete the answer. And this matters because unanswered questions keep your mind working overtime. Your brain keeps returning to the conversation because it never received enough information to close the file. So you ask again. Then they accuse you of repeating yourself. But you are not repeating yourself because you rejected the answer. You're repeating yourself because you never received one. Now let's talk about what kind of flag this may be. One incomplete answer does not automatically prove manipulation. Someone may be surprised, embarrassed, overwhelmed, or genuinely confused about what you're asking. That may be an unclear flag. The moment requires clarification, so you slow down. You clean up the question. You give them the opportunity to answer directly. But when the person repeatedly becomes defensive, redirects the conversation, attacks your character, or makes you pay emotionally for asking a reasonable question, that may be a yellow flag. Now the moment requires observation. Do they calm down and return to the question? Can they recognize that they avoided it? Do they eventually provide the information you asked for? Does every question become a fight for the right to ask it? Because when avoidance becomes the consistent response, then we might be moving into a deeper color, an orange flag. And orange is not, I didn't like that answer. Orange is they repeatedly prevent clarity whenever clarity could expose a contradiction, a broken agreement, or maybe an uncomfortable truth. That pattern requires a decision. You need to decide whether you can continue building with someone who treats basic clarity like an interrogation. And if asking questions leads to threats, intimidation, punishment, or even fear of your own safety, then that's what we call a red flag. At that point, the goal is not to ask the perfect question. The goal is protection. And the color is not determined only by the words they use. It is also determined by the pattern, the impact, and what happens to you when you request clarity. So before you call yourself crazy, difficult, insecure, or obsessed, ask yourself, did they answer my question? Or did they make me regret asking it? Those are not the same two questions. So this is where we get to my method that I use with my clients called the C.O.D.E technique. You clarify, observe, decide, and then enforce. Depending on the flag that we mentioned earlier, clarify. You ask one question, not 6 questions wrapped inside of a speech, not a 12-minute presentation proving why you deserve an answer. And please, not every example from the last 5 years. One question. Did you tell them what I shared with you? Are you still communicating with that person? Did you know about this before today? Then stop. Let the silence remain available for an answer. Because sometimes we become so uncomfortable with the silence that we begin explaining the question for them. We soften it. We offer possible excuses. We tell them the answer that would make us feel better. And now they are not answering your question. They are selecting from the explanations you handed them. Ask clearly. Then let them reveal whether the clarity is something they are willing to participate in. So when we get to a yellow flag, we need to observe. This is the part of the O in the code that we need to observe. Do not only listen to what they have to say, observe what they do with the question. Do they answer directly? Do they acknowledge that they do not know? Do they ask for a moment to think and then return to it? Those are still responses that can create clarity. But do they immediately attack your tone, question your memory, bring up something unrelated to what you do? Do they turn themselves into the victim or make you comfort them? Do they end the conversation and never return? Observation helps you stop judging each conversation as an isolated misunderstanding. You start to recognize the structure. Question, deflection, argument, exhaustion, no answer, temporary space, then the same issue returns. That's not a resolution. That's a cycle. The D in C.O.D.E is decide. Usually after a pattern forms with an orange flag. At some point, you have to stop measuring the quality of their excuses and start measuring the cost of their avoidance. What happens to you inside this pattern? Do you become an investigator? Do you check everything twice? Do you need screenshots, timestamps, witnesses in a courtroom presentation before you trust your own memory? Do you spend hours creating the perfect wording because you believe a better sentence will finally produce honesty in them? That's a lot of labor just to receive information that should have been available through a direct conversation. Your decision is not always whether to leave. The decision may be, I will not continue this conversation until the original question is answered. I will not make another commitment without missing the information. I will no longer treat this deflection as reassurance. I cannot build deeper trust while direct questions keep creating indirect answers. The purpose of a decision is to stop confusion from having unlimited access to your time. And when it does, it's time to enforce. Enforcement is where your clarity becomes visible, because a boundary that only exists during your monologue is not yet functioning as a boundary. You may say, I asked a direct question. You don't have to answer it, but I will make my decision based on your unwillingness to answer. That's enforcement. You are not forcing them to speak. You are refusing to pretend their silence gave you security. If they deflect, you can say, we can discuss my tone after you answer the question I just asked. That keeps the original issue in the room. You can even say, we have discussed this several times and I am no longer looking for another explanation. I'm responding to a pattern that I am noticing. That is what C.O.D.E does. It clarifies the question. It observes their response. Then decide what the pattern means for your access. You enforce that response that protects your clarity. You are not trying to win a confession. You are deciding what you can reasonably build with the information and avoidance you already have received. And when you cannot tell whether you are looking at one confusing moment or developing pattern, use my free flags clarity check. It helps you separate what happened from what you assumed. Examine the response, identify the color and the evidence that supports it, and choose the code response the moment actually requires. You can download it through the link in the description because no one is here to tell you what to believe. But someone needs to remind you they don't need to get credit for answering a question they only reacted to. So if you learned one thing, like and share. But if you learned two things, subscribe, join the community, and see you soon.